Constantly memed on, with a terrible first few seasons, yet still one of the best modern traditional sitcoms I've ever seen. How did we get here? If you happen to watch any of my videos reviewing the first 8 seasons, then you were probably waiting for this moment where I have to admit that I was wrong. It's not the best show ever or anything, but by the last season, it might be one of the best made for this demographic. From the beginning, I expected the series to slowly sell out its values more and more, and towards the middle, I got really worried that it was just going to be a bunch of nerds learning to stop caring about their passions in order to grow up. It is kind of that, but it's written really well compared to other similar series. If anything, the bad start makes the ending way more impressive. Every single character starts off with massive flaws that are honestly impossible to tolerate. Sitcoms as a genre are meant to be comfortable, but I wouldn't be willing to hang out with any of these characters in the early seasons. Sheldon is narcissistic and demanding. Leonard has some weird self-pitying complex that just makes me hate hearing him complain. Raj is shy to such an insane degree that he really just needs to get medicated. Penny is vapid and kind of dismissive, and Howard is a straight-up sex offender. None of these people would be on my list of friends to keep in touch with, and that ends up being super relevant to my enjoyment of the series.
We see this most easily in Sheldon. I'll come back to all the other characters, but Sheldon's such a big deal that the whole tone of the show is kind of dictated by what the writers want to do with him. In the early seasons, they wanted him to be so over the top that the average TV audience could watch him like a skit show while they developed a traditional sitcom in the background. Leonard would be a nerd trying to live a normal life, and Sheldon would be this ever-present reminder that he's giving up on truly being nerdy. But as time went on, it stopped making sense for Leonard to act like Sheldon was actually more fulfilled than him, so they switched up the dynamic. Instead of Sheldon being the voice in everyone else's ear telling them they're not good enough at being smart, they became the vessel for Sheldon to recognize that he was sacrificing a normal life unnecessarily. Early on, so many episodes are basically Sheldon does something crazy, everyone demands he apologize, he doesn't really, but everyone moves on anyway. It's just this purgatory for the cast where they try to live normal lives but get shut down at every turn by this uncaring force that they're not allowed to remove from their lives. I genuinely feel super sorry for Leonard in the early seasons because without realizing it, by accepting Sheldon as his roommate, he also accepted him as his responsibility. He's too nice to abandon Sheldon, and Sheldon's too selfish to realize the gift that he's been given in his friends. They put up with so much with no promise of a reward, just hoping that one day Sheldon might grow up just a little. You can see the exhaustion on the characters' faces. They just look so upset every time Sheldon opens his mouth, and as the audience we're cued to react the same way. They needed to slowly transition the show's Kramer into a caring, empathetic human, and it takes forever to get there. I'd call seasons 1, 2, and I guess 3 the Bazinga era. They figure out jokes that keep people watching when it comes on TV and overuse them to such an insane degree that if I weren't working on something like this, I couldn't have binged it. It kind of feels like another sitcom that'll get canceled after a few seasons and almost never be talked about again, yet it found its audience. People liked the ideas enough to stick around and see where they were going. Then they move on to the next saga, which, for lack of a better name, we're going to call the Family Era, and it contains seasons 3 through 8 or 9, and I start liking it a bit. This is where we really get to start seeing Sheldon develop, and they use Amy as a catalyst for this. Early on, she's basically just a girl Sheldon, but as she takes on her own character, she kind of pushes him to accept things that he might not want to. Him realizing that he cares more about her than the science is done so subtly that it's hard not to be impressed in hindsight. The breakup is worth mentioning specifically just because of how much work it did and how artfully it did it. Big Bang Theory has constant breakups early on, so we, the audience, and Sheldon all assume that this is some dumb drama that'll blow over in a few episodes, but it's not that at all. Sheldon initially tries to fix things with some type of brute force strategy, I guess. He badgers her ear off, demanding a concrete position on their relationship, and she does not let him get away with that. At a certain point, someone needed to stand up to him, and it needed to be someone that Sheldon respected and would miss way too much, so giving Amy this big moment where she just lets loose on him about how he's a selfish baby and that she deserves better really resonated. So many characters have tried to get Sheldon to this point. Everybody has friction with the guy, but they end up accepting bare minimum apologies, so Amy forcing out an actual change in Sheldon's perspectives comes out of left field. I haven't seen Jim Parsons being worth mentioning in anything else, but his performance here is pretty good. He manages to convey so much feeling in this character that's meant to be comically emotionless. He's completely crushed, like he has a total personality reset. Sheldon suddenly realizes the burden that he's been putting on these people that care about him, and he starts making small steps to be a better friend. They even manage to maintain the idea that he's the main comedic relief character while completely flipping the emotions he elicits. Everyone still gets mad at him sometimes after this happens, but the tone is just so much kinder. Early on, when the characters were upset, there would never be any real payoff, so you'd walk away from the episode thinking Sheldon didn't learn anything. But now, when he upsets people, they give him the chance to fix things in a reasonable way. They tell him why what he did was wrong. Sheldon at least attempts to interpret what people are saying in earnest, and to pay him back for trying, the rest of the characters are patient with him. This era redefines the cast from a bunch of losers that don't even seem to like each other into like a found family. And as characters begin to pair off and settle down, it only strengthens the bonds of the group.
They invest in each other's careers and personal lives as much as they need to support each other, and it starts to feel like a traditional comfort show. Plus, they managed to fix almost every single problem that the first era was plagued by. Sheldon's given a grounding force in Amy, Leonard and Penny pairing off together gives them both an opportunity to explore their insecurities in a safe space, and Howard isn't a pervert anymore. He still kind of is, but it's just so much different from the guy planting cameras in Penny's bedroom. Now his more uncomfortable traits are given a better outlet in his wife. Don't get me wrong, Bernadette's a great character in her own right, but her best effect on the show has to be her influence on Howard. Just like how Amy made Sheldon rein in his more over-the-top traits, Bernadette demands the same of Howard. He's still this kind of slimy, Weasley guy, but it takes shape in a more fun way. He's kind of just like underhanded and willing to take advantage of the situation. They clearly wanted him to be the edgy guy in the group, so I think treating him like a con artist is a much better play than him being a gross pervert. Outside of Sheldon, he's definitely the most rude, but he has a better understanding of where the line is. It's really hard for his character to come back from how he treated Penny in the early seasons, but if you're just watching this show as it comes on TV, I can see him being one of your favorite characters. He's snarky and nerdy, but super grounded. He never really faltered in his love for Bernadette, while we see every other character second-guess their decisions and partners. You can call him the wife guy at this point, and as the show goes on, it just leans more into this wholesome side. The last few seasons are, the last few seasons of a sitcom. We get to see every character's plots wrapped up in these little satisfying ways, and they do a pretty good job in this show. With Howard, the big endgame was him becoming a dad. We've gotten lore from the beginning about his relationship with his father and how it affects him still as an adult. And he definitely needed an extra push beyond being married to Bernadette to finally grow up. He freaked out at first, but it seems like raising kids really rounds out his character. And for him and Bernadette, it looks like it makes him a lot more content. Leonard and Penny have some ups and downs trying to figure things out, but they realize that's what makes them such a good pair. Neither of them are super certain about anything they're doing in their lives, so they're trying to figure it out together. They're constantly playing this game of chicken to push responsibility onto the other person because they're so afraid of making a decision for their own lives. Until eventually they're forced to address it, but by that point it's not so bad because they know the other person can do it, so it makes them believe in themselves as well. It actually is kind of sweet how they bring out the best in each other. And that's kind of the whole theme of the show. Reliable friends that help you reach goals. Initially I assumed the last season would be all about weddings and babies and stuff, and it kind of is that, but that's more incidental. It didn't even really click until the finale, but it subverted my expectations hard. Sheldon and Amy won a Nobel Prize, and they invited all their friends out to see them receive it. Sheldon started to do his normal Sheldon nonsense where he tries to control everybody until they feel bad for trying to support him. He almost completely regresses to his old selfish nature because of how important this award was to him, but everyone shows up anyway. Originally for his speech, he was going to go on this long, horrible rant about all the people he was proving wrong. But when he sees all of his friends in the audience, he's reminded of all the things that they've done for him. The biggest moment of his life, and all he is grateful. All of his friends and the audience expect him to let out some of the ego that he's been building up over the years, but instead he surprises everybody and says thank you. It's a great moment for the finale. This general episode structure has been used before. Everyone tries to congratulate Sheldon on his part in something big and support him through a speech, but he's almost always used this as an opportunity to let us down. If we ever do see change, it might not stick into the next episode. It was great to see less of these episodes in the later seasons, but it works oddly well for a finale. Everyone has been angry at Sheldon dozens of times, so they know how bad he can be, but they assume that he had a little bit more self-awareness by this point in the series. They almost bail, but decide to keep being patient with him and support him one last time. Seeing them there after assuming he scared them off makes them feel honored, loved, content, whatever you want to call it. When his ego should be the biggest ever, he is the most humble we've ever seen him. It sells the show, honestly. I get why people watch reruns of this all the time. I get why people wanted a Sheldon spinoff. I'm probably not going to watch it, but I get why other people are invested enough to want more. Just such a good finale. It's pretty well-designed comfort TV, and it doesn't take a lot of work to digest. I could go into the flaws more if I wanted, like how Raj got better but is still the worst part of the show, or how every guest actor performs the worst I've ever seen them, but it's the Big Bang Theory. I'm not going to tell you what you already know. It's a much more worthwhile conversation to talk about the things the show does well. Like how it managed to restructure a show about instantly nerds into something where arguably all the best characters are girls, or how it finds a way to make all the pairings feel super necessary for everyone's development, or how the later seasons improve the rewatchability of the early ones so much. I focused mainly on the Sheldon stuff because that was definitely the highlight for me, but there's plenty to enjoy. It is significantly better than a lot of other sitcoms that have gotten similar levels of praise, like How I Met Your Mother and Friends and Two and a Half Men. Definitely the best Chuck Lorre project, at least. And I may actually rewatch some of the later seasons if I'm looking for something to put on in the background, so this show's earned a sitcom score of 6 out of 10. Pretty comfortable show when you get used to it, but it'd be low on my list of recommendations. Thanks for watching the end of the video, guys. Please like and subscribe. I promise I will make more content.